In this video, I'm going to talk about the PTE item type, fill in the blanks, the one that occurs in the listening section of the exam, because of course we know we also have fill in the blanks in the reading. Now, in PTE listening, this actually contributes to both your listening and your writing scores. And later in the video, I'm going to give you some tips and strategies about how to deal with this difficult item type. You might get 2 or 3 of these in the exam, and you get a partial credit for each word that you spell correctly. And for any that you spell incorrectly, you lose a credit as well, okay? So that meant where I've mentioned there about spelling, that's really important. We're going to come to that in a moment. But first, let's talk about what happens. Basically, you hear an audio. It might go for, on average, 45 to 60 seconds. And you're given a text, like a big paragraph, and it will have like 5 or 6 spaces that are blank. And you need to fill in those blanks, obviously. The big difference between the reading, fill in the blanks, the 2 types of reading, fill in the blanks, and listening, fill in the blanks, is of course that once you've heard the word, you can't go back. With the reading, you can go back and read it again, but with listening, you can't listen again. And the second thing is, in reading, you don't get tested on spelling because the words are given to you. You just have to choose which is the correct one. In this case, the words aren't given to you. You've got to listen to them in listening, and you have to then spell it correctly. And when you're working under pressure in the exam, that can be harder than it sounds, okay? Even if you spell words really well, when you're working under pressure, you might accidentally type it incorrectly by hitting the wrong key. So always take a moment before you move on to the next item type to double check your spelling, okay? Because if you spell it wrong, even with one letter, then it's all wrong, that word, okay? Now, when you come to looking at this item type, be aware that what you're being tested on is the following. Not only listening and spelling, but also grammar. The computer is trying to test your ability to hear the correct verb form. So correct verb tense is should the word in the space be in the past, the present, or the future, etc. As well as should there be an S on the end of a noun, or is it actually uncountable, so it wouldn't have an S, for example. Little things like that, okay? So listen out, be aware that you are being tested on grammar. So maybe you sort of, as you're rushing, you sort of hear the word and you type in something, but you're not quite sure if you've spelt it or totally captured the correct grammar form. Well, you can come back at the end, even though you can't come back to listen to the audio, you can come back to correct the spelling and the grammar form in that space. So an exercise I often do with my students is when we're looking at fill in the blanks, listening fill in the blanks, before we listen to the audio, I challenge the students to write down numbers 1 to 5, what grammar form is required in each space. Is it a verb? Is it a noun? An adjective? A preposition? What's required there, okay? That's one tip that I give for you. If you've practiced that a bit before the exam, then when you're in the exam, that should come to you really quickly, just automatically knowing what kind of grammar form goes there. The other thing we're being tested on is collocations, word pairings. You will have heard me mention this in many of the other videos in this series. Collocations are 2 words that work well together. So let me see. Happy family, arranged marriage, environmental damage. I've mentioned that one a bit in some other videos. So 2 words that work well together. You're being tested on that as well. Okay, so these are the main tips. The other, of course, is time management. At the end of the audio, you then can take as long as you want before you move to the next question. So you can take as long as you want for spelling and grammar, but careful there with that tip because I'm going to add some more information there. Don't take as long as you want. Try to move on within 20 to 30 seconds after. So very quickly checking your spelling and grammar, etc. That's why practicing those skills at home before the exam will help save you time in the exam. And the reason is that you have a total time for the listening section that you have to manage. So that's why you don't want to waste too long checking your answers. But do spend a little bit of time on it. I hope you found this helpful.